Alright, so it's been a couple hours on this. This is the harness that we're working on to go in the 72 squareback. Complete bumper to bumper harness is the plan in the end with an EJ22. Went through, watched not a full 2 hours worth of work, I'm not going to call that. Just because I watched a lot of the Bussaroo videos. I don't know if any of you, the rest of you, have into those. But definitely I would suggest, if you're ever even looking or thinking about doing this Subaru swap, to check those out. Great information. The guy seems to know what he's talking about. And he's also a local guy out of Durango, Colorado. So a good person to get to there. He seems to be able to do a lot of these. Plus, if you don't want to do all of this craziness, he actually does do that and sells some of the parts and stuff. So part of what I did was the simple pinouts, which basically, for those who didn't know, because I didn't have a clue what a pinout was when I started this, this is basically looking at the ECU pins or wires going into the ECU and looking at each individual wire and what it powers and where it goes to, or more or less what it powers, I guess. So luckily, I guess for me, the 90 to 94s does not have much that I have to remove. If I wasn't doing the complete bumper to bumper harness, would have been, I think, pretty super simple. I basically would have hacked it somewhere right in there. Those would have all been gone. I would have had parts of these, but most of these would be gone. Most of this, and I would not be using this fuse block or the interior fuse block. It would have been a pretty straightforward, but I want to try to do and get a little bit more out of this Subaru swap, try to get a little bit more of my bang for my buck. So when I went through his pin by pin, he does off of I believe a 95 or a 96. I think he does a 96, to be honest. So that would be an OB2. So it's not what this one is. This is actually an OB1 computer. But going through here, kind of here you can see, he says the neutral safety switch you can leave off. It'll throw a code if you leave it off, but it won't hurt the running any. Or you connect it to a 5-volt power source. I think he shows like some sort of little relay or solenoid chip thing that you hook that converts 12 to 5, and then you just hook it to power. If you got a manual car like I did, like a 5-speed car, then this you don't have to touch. That's the automatic to manual identification. If you got an automatic, there's some stuff you got to do to that. But you can look at his videos and they can kind of tell you. Let's see here. The main relay, that's just your self shut-off control. Check engine light, you don't have to run them, but you can. I will probably run this to some little LED that'll be like underneath the seat or in the engine bay. So when I get check engine lights, it won't necessarily, especially since I probably will leave that off, which means I will have a check engine light. But I can still check codes. So leaving this here and having a light to it, but yet hid, means I won't be seeing a light in the middle of the night all the time, constantly there. But whenever I want to check the codes, I can cross a couple wires and it'll flash codes and I can look them up. The other thing we can do here, engine tach output, like you said, like I kind of wrote on there, use it with a tach so you can actually run that up to the dash, and then now you'll have an aftermarket tach to run to know what it is. I was curious about this purge control and atmosphere pressure, but apparently we keep those, and those are actually going to be inside the engine connections, so we don't really have to worry about it. Select monitor signal, that's just your, it was kind of a specialty thing, like the Volkswagens have their little specialty plug in the back. This was Subaru's. There's a few people that have them. I'll probably leave it on there just in case, for whatever reason. All of these you leave. The only thing I'm seeing on here is the vehicle speed sensor. From what I'm hearing, and what he says in the video and a few others, is that I can actually leave that disconnected. That basically tells the computer that the vehicle is moving, so it just kind of reads the speed, but it doesn't tell how fast it's going. So what I probably will do is I've heard that the Phase 1s, which is your 90 to 94, actually don't need it, but they run supposedly smoother if you do have it. So what I'll do is I'll leave it off for now, leave myself a couple foot, maybe a foot worth of lead coming out of the computer, and down the road I might try to do something with that whenever I feel like I've got everything else I need and I feel like spending some money maybe on top of that. Past that, some other stuff I kind of worked on here. Kind of, I guess, for orientation purposes, I have got the driver's doors / driver's dash area. As you can see, it's no longer in its room. Kind of going through all these. Had a few more wires that popped up. That I figured out, like this big honking thing here is what I cut. It actually, as you can see, is the ignition switch, so that would have went, this end would have had the key attached to it. And then I found a few other things down here that I didn't have before. So there's this little, here we go, little relay here. Wasn't really sure what it was. It looks like it could be an HVAC blower relay, but I did find one on that side. So as you can see right there in the blue in the middle of the screen, that's actually a relay over there also that looks identical to this. So maybe these are the two same things. I might have to trace this wire out later to see what this goes to, because it was for the HVAC. Like I said, I plan on keeping AC, so then I would need this. If it's to something else, then I might not. Something else I did identify is these two are important. Main relay for that. It's not really sure what it does, but it's the main relay, so we definitely need it. And this green relay here, the little cylinder one, that is actually the fuel pump relay. So we will definitely need that. And then I kind of went through, as you can see, originally this would be your door speaker. I clipped it off because I needed to get the door stuff out of the way so I could have it. It's here. I'm not going to connect it through a door, so I'm not worried about the connection, because the connection was actually a pretty large connection. And there's only 2 wires, so I just need something small. But I did label it, and then I tied it so that when I'm coming through, I know that there's a tie in it, so it's something that's probably important and I should check it out. I did figure out this little relay here, and all I'm doing basically is just kind of Googling the numbers and the car make and model and seeing what it is, and this was actually a horn relay. So since my car has never had a horn that worked, this might be kind of handy to have. And then the rest of these here, this would have been more of the door stuff for like the power locks, power mirrors, all that kind of fun stuff. I went ahead and clipped it because I'm not going to use it at all. The other thing I did is some of these areas here where you can see things have plugged in, but obviously to make more easier so I can spread this out, because this thing was normally super tight in here. I disconnected stuff, but to know where it goes back, I've labeled the places where they plug into, and then as you can see here, I've labeled at least the plugs, so that when I can grab a plug later down the road, there we go, I can kind of know where it goes back to and plugs into. Because like I said, I'm going to try to use this because here we go. As you can see, instead of using those little plastic ones like what Volkswagen come out with, they worked great. You know, what, 40 years ago, whenever they came out, 50 years ago. But now I can control my radio, I can control engine, wiper, washer, because obviously I'm going to use that from the car. And a lot of these others, some of these I won't use, like the ABS I'm obviously not going to use. Not sure what that meter is, I'll check it out later. Door locks, not going to need that. So some of these will be ones, as you can see here, that I can use or tie into something later. So if I want to add a stereo system or maybe some lighting to the car, or something just different along those lines there, USB cables or something, then I can actually use some of these. And of course this is, sorry, pop it off here, for lack of a better word, I call them the GM fuses. I guess they're not quite as small as the GM ones, but they're a lot more common to get these days, so basically anywhere along the road I'd be able to find these. They're easier There's more of them, as you can already see here. There's several circuits on this one compared to what the Volkswagen have. When you compare this and right there we go, and that one there, it gets me a lot. And of course this one here controls and of course I got that upside down. A lot of stuff here. Some of this I'll be using, some I won't. Like ABS, of course I won't use, but the headlight relays I'll use. Hazards, light, you know, some of these others. Clock, I'm not really sure what clock room is, but I may or may not use that. AC relays, of course I'll use because I'm using trying to use the Subaru's AC, and if not, then I'm going to scrap as much as I can from it. But so far, I've probably got about 3.5 hours. Like I said, tonight's been a lot of YouTube videos, searching to figure out, thinking that there's got to be this magical, you hear about this harness being so hard, there's got to be a lot of stuff I'm removing or changing in this harness. But to be honest, if I wasn't trying to use headlights, taillights, and this other stuff, it sounds like this harness would be super easy. Just a couple cuts, remove a crud load of wires, and you'd be done and go. I think once I start tearing into this, it might get a little easier, because of course here in the middle I got a lot of wires, because I got HVAC, I got engine stuff coming right through in this part here. I probably will start maybe tomorrow night at the back and working up, because like I said, I'm not obviously going to run a rear windshield wiper, because the square backs never had them. I won't be running the open door sensor to let me know that the rear hatch is open, because once again I don't really care if it is or not. I'll make sure it's shut. And I want to say, like things like this, there's a lot of wires going to that. This version of the Subarus had that amazing seatbelt system that ran along the tracks that everyone loved from the early 90s. As you can see, that's a lot of wires there I can get rid of. There's a plug there that would have some wires, probably that one or something. So there's going to be a lot of wires that I think once I start tracing them back and I get it back up into this scenario, that will be a lot easier to figure out what goes where, because there's a lot of these things that kind of all connect. And the same thing in the front. I probably will try to, well, I obviously will have to separate the two harnesses up there, because Subaru runs them all together because it makes sense for them. But in theory for me, I have a engine harness sitting right here in view and a headlight harness. So I need the headlights there and the engine harness back here. So we'll probably be doing some moving and separating there. I'm going to try to reuse the wire loom that already came mostly on it of what I see. So far, it seems like the tools I've been using, pair of scissors, tape has been awesome. 2 colors of tape, one for stuff that just gets chucked, and I can cut freely because I don't need it, and then one that I'm actually labeling. And then over here, got a Sharpie in case I need to write something more on the actual piece. I've got, looks like some box cutter there, which kind of helped a couple times. Got the good old metal shears. I love those things. Those can definitely cut some big things out. And kind of the reason I got this out. This does not fit through the front apron area right there, or the front inner fender well. The hole is really tiny, as you can see. This was in the hole. All of that does not fit through. And then of course on this side I have all of this, which does not fit through. When you have the metal shears, you can make, then a sledgehammer, you can make things fit. And then I've been using for the short little wires I need, little side cutters there. It's worked pretty awesome so far. So that's about what I've got there. Like I said, we'll keep going through here. Here's the wires I've eliminated so far. It doesn't feel like I've did too much tonight, but at the same point, like I said, I was doing a lot of researching, looking, reading, trying to figure out what this pinout thing is, because once again, it's not something I've ever come across. So I wanted to see what it is. I got this nifty little wiring diagram, which has helped a little bit, but those two are pretty confusing. I'm not really sure, besides it's the computer, what else I can do. this one will definitely be handy in the future because it's pretty simple to read, and this is actually the headlights, alternator, and kind of the stuff that's right up here in the front. But like I said, if you're starting this, check out some of the Busteroo videos. He's been very helpful. A lot of those videos are pretty awesome. They, of course, are all set mostly to the buses and the Vanagons, but it's a Volkswagen, so most of these things will interchange over. Subarus are kind of the same way. They all kind of work together. So you can kind of figure it out from there. Just some of this extra stuff he doesn't do on that. But yeah, so far that's where I'm at. I'll keep posting and updating as we go, working a little bit by little bit here and there. And hopefully we'll get this harness done in a couple weeks or so.